Hello. Okay, just to remind you where we are, especially for those who haven't seen previous tours or haven't seen all the previous episodes, at least this is where so to speak, the English embankment starts to the right-hand side from this iconic monument to Peter the Great, standing next to St. Isaac's Cathedral, the gilded dome of which I'm sure you can recognize from my St. Petersburg tours. And it's one of the, I would say, Instagrammable places of St. Petersburg. And this is the very heart of St. Petersburg, overlooking the Neva River. And right now we're looking at the opposite bank of the river, the Vasilievsky Island. And this area has always been busy. It's one of the oldest places of St. Petersburg, contemporary to the city itself since the establishing. Of course, the cathedral is from the 19th century, but we know that you may remember from my previous tours that there were several other versions of St. Isaac's Cathedral. So it is one of the oldest churches, not this particular building, but definitely the church itself. The first church was actually built at times of Peter the Great. So that's a pretty big deal, I would say. But it wasn't located here. Now, to the right-hand side from the bronze horseman monument to Peter the Great is this yellow building of the Senate and the Synod, right? The two important bodies. So the Senate, the legislative body, and also the Synod, the building to the left-hand side from this one. You don't see it now because we are on the embankment, but that's the two buildings are connected with the big arch. So the two buildings and the synod is the body in charge of the activity of the Russian churches, basically. But we are on the embankment, and why is it called so? Well, that's because originally it was the area where a lot of Englishmen settled, and but the embankment changed names many times. The last time, well, in the Soviet period, it was called the Embankment of the Red Fleet. And then, after the perestroika in 1994, when late Queen Elizabeth visited St. Petersburg, before her visit, it was decided to give the original name to the embankment. And I think it was a good idea. Also, this embankment, as the tour goes, you will see that this embankment indeed was always used for different political, so to speak, purposes for the big delegations and many, I would say, high-profile guests of St. Petersburg, and because it was the capital, I think it's obviously, I would say, on the international level, it was one of the best venues for big celebrations, political gatherings of any sort, and obviously diplomatic visits. So, but before we get to those high profile stories, let's talk about the house that I would say normally, had it been, an ordinary walking tour on the embankment, which are actually not, which is not the case. Normally, the embankment is passed either on a boat or you just sail past the embankment, or you just go on a bus, always on your way somewhere. So we would normally say, hey, this is the English embankment. A lot of English ambassadors and politicians stayed here. And not only that, so that's why we call it English embankment. However, there are many other stories, not only about the English, but about the English as well. Uh, well, this building is definitely, well, is never really talked about. There's not really much to say. However, we know that this house belonged to Alexei Yakovlev. And we know that this embankment was always a very expensive area, very affluent. So not anyone, not even every nobleman could afford to buy something here. Um, but Yakovlev had enough money. Yakovlev inherited good money and a couple of gold mines from his father. And also he inherited a lot of slaves. So we are talking about the first half of the 19th century. And there is I would say, well, slavery is never really a nice topic to talk about, but there are many other stories that are even worse, such as when the masters they take advantage of the girls that serve to them, and the girls get pregnant, and then many different things happen. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of abuse and well, a lot of ugly stuff. However, with Alexei Yakovlev, it was a little bit different. I haven't been able to find any footage of him. It just, I don't think they actually exist, but the stories are quite interesting. So he, well, he also took advantage at least of one of the slave girls that served to him. Serbs, we call them Serbs, but it doesn't really matter much. So they were the property of aristocrats, right? Russian peasants were the property of aristocrats. So it is slavery anyway. And the girl got pregnant. And Yakovlev, he decided to officially recognize the child. And the child, even it was allowed by the emperor to give the last name of Yakovlev to the serf child, or to the child of the serf, basically. And then also he made sure he gave enough money to the illegitimate children of his father. So basically, his illegitimate cousins, and not the cousins, yeah, cousins, yeah. Exactly, and since he was the only legitimate child, right? But there were also other children, and that was something quite unexpected. Yakovlev hoped by moving to the center of St. Petersburg, he also hoped that he would kind of set a good trend, but and his house was always open to, well, to his neighbors, so to speak. But for some reason, I'm just really surprised nobody else did the same. However, everyone knew that such things happened e- everywhere around them. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter which country when we are talking about. Nevertheless, right now this building belongs to the Marine School, and it's well, I have never been inside. In most of these buildings, I have never been inside because if you remember, and if you don't, I'll remind you that most of these buildings were uh, either belong to like high profile companies, oil businesses, or different governmental institutions of all sorts. So, yeah. But there is an exception. Yeah, definitely there is an exception. And you can see that they're next to this Yakovlev house, quite an assuming Yakovlev house. By the way, that's the back of the Yakovlev house. Um, I would say nothing spectacular about this, but the story is quite interesting. But yes, we preferred not to talk about it. Next to this building, you can see there is a flag attached. It's the flag of the fleet, basically, and a St. Andrew's flag. And next to this unassuming Yakovlev house is the royal palace. And I mean it. It's actually the royal palace, the Rumyantsev palace. It's not called Romanov Palace. It's called Rumyantsev. It's one of the oldest and one of the biggest palaces on the embankment. So basically here, this is the photo from Wikipedia. It's not even mine. It's taken from the other side, at the bank of the Neva River, from the Vasilievsky Island. And to the left-hand side, I know I don't have a pointer, so you're gonna have to be just listening to me and trying to find it on your own. Good luck. So to the leftmost building is the building of the Senate. That's where the embankment begins. And by now, we have seen, as you can see, not so many buildings on the one hand. On the other hand, quite a lot of them. Quite a lot of them. And basically, from here is all the buildings that we have covered. And this is like the first half of the embankment and the most expensive, really, really, the absolutely the most expensive part of the embankment. But to the right hand side is the Annunciation Bridge, which we walked last time. And very close to the bridge would be the Rumyantsev Palace. So this photo, which is a colorized postcard, um, I'm not sure exactly when this was taken, but I assume it's somewhat late 19th century. You can see these palace of the Rumyantsev with the colonnade and a lot of boats. A lot of boats. Well, the boats would be docked there most of the time. As you, the part of the embankment before the bridge would normally be free from the boats. It would be always, for the active sailing. Normally, boats would not be docked there. And as you know, the active sailing will only take place at night when the bridges are up. Grisha, could you please turn down the volume? Grisha, turn down the volume, please. Thank you. And but here it's different. So there would always be smaller boats, bigger boats, all kinds of boats. We will talk about it. There are some very important ones. So this area was always very busy, as you can see. Well, I'm just I'm just showing you some random photos. You see, it's always super busy. And there were also small piers attached to the embankment. They were uh, a permanent piers, and the boats would dock next to them or in between. The Rumyantsev Palace. So just in case you see the Nikolai Rumyantsev, that's the statesperson who purchased this palace in early 1800s. But this building had been there before, but it just looked a little different. So the entire embankment was established in the 1700s anyway. That's what this house looks from the other street. As you know, there are two streets, they run parallel. There is the embankment itself, and there is a street running from the back, just parallel to the embankment. And this is kind of the kind of the it's like in the Stranger Things, kind of the upside down, kind of, because this street is very quiet, and most of the buildings in this street would be just the back facade, the entrances for the servants. So, but just in case, if you walk past this building, you wouldn't even, well, it wouldn't even cross your mind that you're actually passing by a palace. But Rumyantsev, well, we have been to this palace before. So we had a tour about the Rumyantsev Palace, a separate tour. So we're not going to talk about it in detail. I don't want to waste time on that, but the story is so remarkable. And also that tour took place, I don't know, a year ago maybe. So I think a little refresh wouldn't mind, but just a little bit. So let's connect it to the royal family, because Rumyantsev eventually, he passed away. Rumyantsev had a small private museum of mostly old Russian manuscripts. Later on, after his death, his museum collection was moved to Moscow, and it became part of Vladimir Lenin Library collection. But the palace itself was sold multiple times until it was purchased by Grand Duchess Maria Nikolaevna. Well, it was purchased for her by her father, Nicholas I. So we are talking here mid 19th century. And it was the present for the newlyweds, because she married Maximilian of Lichtenberg. And Nicholas I, he well, normally all the Russian princesses would marry Prussian or German princess and would leave. But Maria didn't want to leave her papa, and she just asked, she found the man she loved, and the only condition for the wedding was for the marriage was so that Maximilian of Lichtenberg moved to St. Petersburg, having sold all his property in Europe. And that's exactly what happened. But Maximilian of Lichtenberg actually came with an interesting background. He was a grandson of Napoleon's first wife, the Empress Josephine. And well, that was not what Nicholas I liked, because, well, Napoleon, he attacked the Russian Empire earlier, and it well, um, Nicholas I was quite conservative, and that war didn't happen long. I mean, that war hadn't happened like, I don't know, 200 years before that. It was the same century. It was like 30 years before that. So obviously he wasn't very happy about the decision of Maria to marry Maximilian, but they were quite happy together and they seemed to have been genuinely in love. So it was decided to go on with this. So um, that's how it happened. So they got married and they started living in this palace. So Maximilian, hold on a second. Let me just go back. So yeah, there you go. That's his father, Alexander de Beauharnais. And then, well, they got married and they lived in this palace. They threw incredible parties and they gave birth to Eugene, Duke of Lichtenberg. So Beauharnais, Lichtenberg, these are the different titles. Like Beauharnais was the last name of a grandma, right? And then the Lichtenberg was the title given later on. So basically, Beauharnais, Lichtenberg is one and the same dynasty. So Eugene was their son, and he was a very spoiled child, just to say the least. He was married once, his wife died at the childbirth, and he remarried again. He inherited this house from his parents, and he brought to this house a woman he fell in love with, Zinaida Skobeleva. She was of a much lower descent, but it was okay with the Romanovs that well the Yevgeny married her, so they got married. I think for the Romanovs, it was just basically just wanted to make sure he would be taken care of and kept an eye on because he was always a pain for the Romanovs. He liked gambling. He liked alcohol. Grisha, God, for God's sake, please turn down the volume. Thank you. And well, you can see also in the photo that Zinaida Skobeleva, she was from a noble family. So she was, I would say, she was from a well-to-do family, a well-off family. And just take a look at all this jewelry she's wearing. Someone, uh, well, just decided even to colorize those emeralds for us. I mean, just have a look. And Yevgeny Luftenberg, he did everything to keep on spoiling the love of his life with all the jewelry and all the royal money that he had inherited. He was basically the grandson of Nicholas the First. So I think she found really the best possible match for herself, and that's where they lived. So imagine what kind of parties they threw. This is the foyer, and yes, you can see the effigy um, of a bear because you're in Russia. What else would you see? Of course, you would see bears, right? Of course. And this house was revamped for Zenaida's taste, by the way. They placed this gigantic Carrara marble staircase, and also me. Well, it was one of the last palaces, by the way, I visited before leaving Russia in 2022. These photos were taken in early February 2022. So little did I know. Actually, I came to that palace. These photos were taken right after I was given permission by the museum administration to do several live streams, to run several live streams in the museum. We did go there for the siege tours, which I did already after Russia invaded Ukraine. Yeah, but anyway, I had a lot more plans, but it didn't work out exactly the way I planned. Nevertheless, so you can imagine how much money this family had, and obviously they splashed out on beautiful Italian sculptures, a lot of European artworks, the biggest mirror in St. Petersburg. Just saying, just saying. And well, they also amassed a great collection of furniture. Unfortunately, the exhibition they have there nowadays, well, there are no memorial items, so the furniture disappeared. The furniture just disappeared after the revolution, and there's not really much left from Zinaida Skobeleva, who, after she married Yevgeny, was given the title Bogarne. For some reason, she was not given the title of Lichtenberg, but she was given the Beauharnais. That doesn't really matter much. What matters is that she was recognized officially by the court, and there was no trouble. So there are a lot of memoirs about her in the, I would say, left by the contemporaries. For some reason, she turned heads of all the men around her. I honestly don't know. Those could be just the jewelry. Those could be just, I don't know. She just blinded them, basically. Really hard to say. But I mean, just have a look at all that. How can she even stand with a kokoshnik, with a headpiece like that, and all these emeralds and pearls? I have no idea, for goodness sake. But, well, like this photo. One of the um, nobleman left the memories of one of the parties he attended in the Romanov Palace, in this palace, and he claimed that he couldn't take off his eyes of her. And she was blindingly beautiful and witty and absolutely hilariously joked, during the evening. So basically, I don't know. Yevgeny considered himself super lucky until something else happened. Well, I quite often share with you all sorts of stories, right, of the Romanovs, like um, some secret, some private life stories, and well, there also happened to be a story in this family. Um, Well, another Grand Duke fell in love with Zinaida Skobeleva. By the way, I'm showing you also the photographs of the interiors. As I said, the original furniture, the memorial items, they are lost. You can just have a look at what kind of artworks are there. You see this is, by the way, these are uh, the copies of the Raphael that we have in the Hermitage Museum, but the copies, just the copies. You can see I would say the furniture is quite impressive as it is, and just what we see now, the exhibition nowadays is just the items of the same period, and this is sort of called the recreation of a boudoir of an aristocrat. That's basically it. Unfortunately, as I said, there is not really much left for us. Yes, this room has the same period furniture. It was the study of Yevgeny Lechtenberg, her husband. Um, Also some photos from the internet, some photos from the archives. In the photos from the archives, you can see some photos from of the not the photos, the portraits of the Romanovs. Here in this room, you can see on the mantelpiece, you can see the portrait of Evgeny Lichtenberg. But as I said, well, yeah, by the way, that's the biggest mirror. It is the biggest one-piece mirror in St. Petersburg. And in order to place this mirror, and this was the whimsy of Zinaida herself, they had to take down piece of the wall from the embankment to be able to somehow bring it into the second floor. And yes, this is the second floor, which means they also had to lift it up somehow. So Zinaida fell in love with another Grand Duke Romanov, and she started seeing the Grand Duke uh, while living and being officially the spouse of Yevgeny, just like that. And everyone in the court knew about it. And everyone knew that the Grand Duke Romanov stayed with Zinaida and Yevgeny in one and the same building at one and the same time. I don't know if they stayed in one and the same room. I don't think so. I mean, now my mind wanders the wrong direction. So let's not go that way. Let's get back to this beautiful ballroom. So the crazy parties took place in this room too. Um, so nevertheless, that's Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich. There were even photographs of them together taken the same time. Well, this is Zinaida and Alexei, Grand Duke Alexei. And they even appeared at the parties, three of them, like one big happy family. There are a lot of questions, such as whether, well, Evgeny Maximyanovich was not blind for sure, so he was definitely aware of what was happening, and nobody knows what how he really thought about it, how he really felt about it. But we know that he eventually ran into a lot of debt due to his gambling and drinking, and it could be just simple reason because Grand Duke Alexei had a lot of money, and Zinaida and Evgeny, they basically drained him. However, they seem to have been genuinely in love too. I mean, she seemed to have been genuinely in love with Evgeny, and Grand Duke too. Who knows? Anyway, so this is the portico of the palace. This is the Apollo surrounded with the muses on Parnassus, Apollo Musajid, and this building being one of the first private museums, it eventually got earned the reputation of one of the most, I would say, mischievous places due to all those stories. Well, nevertheless, so this house is still here. It's a museum now of history of St. Petersburg, and there are different exhibitions there. So we did a live stream in February 2022 about the siege of the communal apartment exhibition. It was also located, it's still in this museum. So speaking of the boats that would be docked in on the by this embankment, there is actually a monument. It looks like a big stone memorial tablet that says that on the 25th of October, 7th of November, old style, 1917. I'm sure you can see the dates. The rest is in Russian, so I don't expect you to be able to read that. Here on this spot used to be docked the cruiser ship Aurora, the one that gave a signal for the revolutionary forces aiming at taking over the Winter Palace. Grisha, don't do that, please. I'm sorry. Yes. So, nevertheless, let me just kind of jog your memory what I'm talking about. Well, many of you are familiar with the story of the Russian Revolution, but I need to just remind you of a few things. So basically, the revolution, the October Revolution, right? Which put to an end all the hopes for the restitution of the monarchy. It started, so to speak, and it kind of culminated into the storm of the Winter Palace, where the provisional government resided. And exactly with the storm of the Winter Palace, it was kind of, it just became clear that that was it. That the government, that the city was taken over by the Red Forces, by the Bolsheviks, and that was it. So the Bolsheviks basically needed the signal. They just were waiting for the signal of the cruiser ship. So once they heard the signal, they knew it was clear. It was good to go, and that was it. So that was quite an important place. So obviously, in the Soviet period, there was placed this tablet, which says that that signal gave start was the symbol of the new era, so to speak. This photo was taken in the Soviet period already, and the battle crew, well, the cruiser Aurora used to be standing exactly here, used to be docked exactly by the Rumyantsev Palace up until like 80s. And then further on, it was moved to another location, which you may remember from my boat trips, from my live walks in St. Petersburg. Well, yes. Anyway, let's move on. And it wasn't just the Aurora ship that was docked there. Many, many, many other ships, yachts as well. So this is the house of Robert Davenport, but it's actually this is not the official name. Robert Davenport happened to be the first owner of the house, which looked a little different. But as you can see by the facade, it's quite an old facade. So this is one of the oldest buildings. It's one of the that, so to say, preserved its almost original looks. Who was Robert Davenport? Actually, he was a shipbuilder, but he was, so to speak, the supervisor of the shipbuilding. Davenport was actually hired by Peter the Great in one of his, you know, trips to Europe. And as you know, Peter hired a lot of foreign nationals to build the city, to bring and introduce new industries to the city. Davenport was one of them. Davenport even spent some time in Arkhangelsk up north. He helped Peter also build other fleets, and eventually he moved to St. Petersburg. And he was given a land. He was given a plot of land and a place to live exactly here by the English embankment. Why by the English embankment? Because he was an Englishman? Not really. But the thing is that a lot of Englishmen were originally who came to St. Petersburg in early 1700s. They had something to do with the shipbuilding, and they would be housed on this embankment because the shipbuilding yard was just, well, let's say it's 5 minutes walk from here to the left from the Davenport house. So it just made sense to settle not far from the shipbuilding yard at all. Well, the Admiralty building. Yep. So yeah, as I said, the Davenport, he first came alone, and then his family joined him. He had several children. So basically, this is how Peter the Great made St. Petersburg. Well, he turned St. Petersburg into a melting pot, the city full of international specialists. And another love scandal that broke out in St. Petersburg in the 19th century. It seemed, I'm pretty sure that to, I would say, a lot of conservative St. Petersburgers back in the 19th century, they felt that the world was going to somewhere wrong direction, to a dark place, because even the Romanovs started sinning, seeing, having affairs, seeing some mistresses, and they would kind of do it in the light of day, so to speak, like in the broad daylight, I mean. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure some people did think this way. Anyway, Alexander the Second. And by the way, that's the same story I'm sharing on my world virtual tours of Alexandria Palace. So I started talking about last time, and I'll carry on today a little bit. So Alexander II, the emperor who ruled from 1855 to 1881, the one who eventually abolished serfdom, he was happily married to Maria Alexandrovna, so she was a Prussian princess, his beloved wife, who gave him seven beautiful children. And then her gynecologist simply told her to stop giving birth to children, stop having sex with her husband. And she was okay with that because she had been, I would say, quite uh, tired from childbirth. It happened almost every year. But well, Alexander II wasn't too happy about it, and eventually, well, he first had just some, I would say, well, kind of white night stands, one night stands, and then all of a sudden he fell in love with Ekaterina Dolgorukova, He knew her when she was just a girl, but no dodgy business. But she started at the Academy for Noble Girls, for the boarding school for noble girls, the Smolny Institute, and Alexander II was a patron of this institution. So he saw her at one of the gala events, and that was it. That was just love at first sight. It went so crazy. And by the way, his wife, Maria Alexandrovna, she had tuberculosis and things were not looking good. And basically, Katerina Dolgorukova first came to the Winter Palace as the lady in waiting. And well, as she was the lady in waiting to the Empress, at the same time, she was seeing Alexander II, and she lived in the Winter Palace together with Alexander II and his wife, and her room was on the third floor, like above the room of the Empress herself. Did the Empress know? Yes, she did. So, but before moving to the Winter Palace, Ekaterina Dolgorukova purchased this house, and this is where she and Alexander II started seeing each other. So they bought a palace. They wouldn't rent a room, they wouldn't hire a hotel room, right? They wouldn't go with the booking. So they just decided to buy a house for that. Yes. And then they just thought it would be a lot easier and save them a lot of time just to move into the Winter Palace. So he had three children with Ekaterina Dolgorukova. That's the happy father. To recognize all the children, they were given their royals. Well, they weren't given the title of the Romanovs, but well, she would be given the title of Countess Dolgorukova, which is an old dynasty, very old kin. And well, that's basically how things uh, were looking. They were looking up for her for sure. And had it not been for his death, Alexander II was killed by terrorists in 1881. And had it not happened, she would have become the empress officially, like absolutely legit, the same year. But that wasn't that wasn't meant to be. And well, the rest is history. She had to leave for Paris, and from Paris she carried on blackmailing other Romanovs, threatening to uh, publish the correspondence that contained a lot of 18 plus things, which eventually did happen anyway, but later on, already after the revolution. Anyway, and in this house for some time, even uh, there was housed a how shall I put it, a kind of a hobby club for the deaf and the mute. I'm not even sure what they're doing there. Maybe they are spinning. I think so. I'm not sure. So it was kind of a hobby club for the deaf and the mute. And now there is a hotel. Just some photos that I found online. There used to be a courtyard, but as you see now, it's just covered. And well, this is just one of the, I don't know even what is this. So this must be a dining room now at the hotel. But anyway, I have never been inside anyway, so I don't know. And probably the last but one building to talk about today is another, I would say, unassuming building, which happened to witness the arrival of all the monarchs and presidents and queens and kings, because as I said, that part of the embankment was intended for these type of things. For example, in 1997, the president, Felix IV, the French president, came to St. Petersburg, and his boat was docked exactly by exactly this embankment by this unassuming house, so next to the Rumyantsev. So that's Felix IV. And Felix IV was actually a good friend of the Romanovs. And when he came in 1997, among many things. He also participated uh, in the lane of the Trinity Bridge in St. Petersburg. And later on, also there was launched the construction of the Alexander the Third Bridge in Paris. So that was the symbol of friendship between the Russian Empire and France. So this is exactly the foundation, the laying of the foundation stone into the um, Trinity Bridge. So 1997. Yes. So it was just one visit, but there were a lot more. There was a visit of, well, nearly every politician that, well, this is the Trinity Bridge, by the way, just in case. And before the bridge was built, there was this pontoon bridge, which, well, I mean, it did the job, but it definitely just didn't match, it didn't fit into the style and the looks of the opulent embankment just around the corner from the Winter Palace. So obviously there was needed a proper solid metal bridge. So there was just only a matter of time. And this is the inauguration already of the bridge 4 years later. Not four, sorry, 7 years later. Yes, so eventually by 1904, the Trinity Bridge was finished, and this is exactly when the opposite bank of the river, together with all the islands, started its development. I would say at a breakneck speed. Nevertheless, so that's the story. But it's just like one one ship. There were also a lot of fleet holidays that also included the parade of the ships and battleships. It also took place exactly by the Romancev Palace and by the other buildings. For example, the visit of the Italian, the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III. He also arrived, and his boat was docked here on the embankment. Also, visit of Kaiser of Germany, Wilhelm II. It also happened exactly in the same spot. So those houses, unassuming ones such as this one, he saw it all. And this house belonged to the Vasilchikov family, who were the statespeople, military people. Ilarion Vasilchikov was an well, he served in the army. He was a statesperson, and his son inherited this house after his father passed away. And Alexander Vasilchikov, it's not really an important character, but it's a way for me to kind of build a connection between my tours, because Alexander Vasilchikov happened to be a witness and the second at the duel of Mikhail Lermontov, a Russian poet and writer, about whom Misha gave us a speech exactly last weekend. By the way, that tour recording is available from my website. Mikhail Lermontov is a very important writer for the 19th century Russian literature, and he was, like many others, madly in love with the Caucasus and Tiflis, Tbilisi, and in Tbilisi there is a street named after Lermontov. So it's just and so basically, we can say that Vasilchikov, who was a friend of Mikhail Lermontov, they served together. So he witnessed the conflict. He was the second at the duel, and he saw the death of Mikhail Lermontov himself. And Lermontov, he visited Vasilchikov in this house multiple times, multiple times. Yes, okay. I think this is where we wrap this up because we first need to have a Q&A, and then I need a couple of minutes to switch to the next tour, which starts in 7 minutes from now. So I'm doing two tours back to back, and so at least some of you. So hello to those who joined us a little after we started. Hi, Cindy, Pamela. Hi, Robert. Marty, I seem to see two of you. Am I seeing double? Hi, Anne. I'm not sure. Hi, Robin, Catherine. Good to see you all. So yeah, this has been recorded. So regardless, like when you joined, you will be able to catch up with what you have not seen. So let me share with you the links. In 6 minutes from now, we are heading to the Stone Island of St. Petersburg for the last episode, by the way, of the Stone Island. There's going to be some more whimsical architecture. There's going to be some more Art Nouveau. And also, I took time to tell you the story of the buildings that are no longer with us because the Soviet period was merciless to a lot of architecture, obviously, not just people, but also architecture. Okay, so here on the chat, let me open the chat for questions. So yes, let me know if you have any. So what we're doing tonight, we are heading to the Stone Island in 5 minutes from now. Then after a 90-minute break, I'm taking you to Tbilisi to one of the Romanov palaces. Well, it belonged to the relatives of the Romanovs. And then I'm taking you to Alexandria Romanov residence, a lot of Romanovs today. For tomorrow, it's going to be a chocolate festival in Tbilisi in the botanical garden. So it's the delicious treats and the sweeping views. It's the unbeatable combo, which we like a lot. And plus, we're likely to see a lot more yellow leaves. It's going to get even more, I would say, um, fall or autumnal. Say that? I'm not. Anyway, so we are likely to get even more autumn vibes. I can't promise Christmas vibes because there's no snow, but definitely it's gonna be festive anyway. Let's me put it like that. So, yes, Dolly, you joined exactly when I finished talking about it. I did change the hours a little bit, so that's why we're heading to the Stone Island in 5 minutes, and then we're having 90-minute break, and then we're heading to the Tbilisi Palace of the Romanovs, Oldenburgs, and the usual time for Alexandria. So for tomorrow, the Chocolate Festival, then Nikolai Gogol, Ukrainian-born writer, very interesting, very, I would say, really unique and brilliant. And then the Temple Mount for a lot more interest in archaeology and other kind of stories. And just in case, another episode, another tour of the English Embankment is already scheduled and is going to be the next Saturday, approximately the same time. Just in case, just say. Thank you, Dorley. Thank you. Thank you so much. The live stream tomorrow will be at 7 a.m. for the East Coast. Ellen, it unfortunately there's nothing I can do about it. I could schedule it even for the 6 a.m. if you wish, but the thing is that the festival closes at 6 local time, which is like 9 a.m. for the East Coast. But I don't think there will be a lot of chocolate left if we start like about the closing time. So I want to be there before all the chocolates are eaten. And I don't want it to get dark because the botanical garden has to be seen while it's still bright outside. I'm very sorry. There's nothing I can do about it, but it's going to be recorded and it's going to be available. So, but of course, Ellen, I totally understand that it's just not convenient for many. And well, just thank you for everyone who will try to join. And if you watch it in the recorded mode, it's not a big deal as well. I mean, it's always best to watch live. Like I myself I hate watching the recordings of the tours, but I sometimes have to if I want to catch up with some tours. Well, but yeah, what can I say? No, 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 Dolly, it's not your calendar. It's not you. It's me just rearranging things just to have enough time to talk about the Oldenburg Palace. Yes. Was the name the Skobelev related to the famous? No, 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 no. You mean the General Skobelev, the 19th century? Yes, she was related to him. Yes. There was also another Skobelev in the 20th century, so that's why I'm asking. But if it's the Skobelev, the the Shipka battle. Yes, so she was related to him. Yeah, but not directly. I would say just a very old kin, and there were a lot of representatives, and they were old, and the army and the politics. So yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Alexander wasn't in your calendar. Oh, well, if you can join, I'll be happy to see you, obviously. It's the usual time for our virtual tours, 11 p.m. my time, and for you, it should be 9 p.m., right? Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. As you know, I would always appreciate your support. It can be a PayPal donation. You could buy me a coffee. And on my website, you can find a lot more tours. There are a lot more well, virtual tours already up. There are a lot of tours already scheduled for the upcoming weekend, a lot of Christmas tours. So next weekend, we're doing this Christmas things on full scale. I'll see you soon, like in 2 minutes, on a different tour in the Stone Island. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'll see you soon. Thank you and bye bye. Give me 2 minutes. I need to just, transgress to another island.